7:30. We're right on time for our Kickstarter conversation. And so have you grabbed your copies? We did sample another story, a development in the Makerere boards. And so the Makerere VC has moved to propose that there will be no pay for striking staff. So this is a story that we've been seeing, the push and pull in Makerere really. Just before we get into the conversation and before we tell you who we have in studios to have this conversation and what the future holds for Makerere University, the mighty Makerere University, let's take a look at this video.
The fact that our welfare is critical in the service of our country, my executive will continue with the struggle towards 15 million for a professor and product. We have found commitment from government that this long expected target will be achieved by 2020. My executive is also struggling to ensure that an environment for sharing all internally generated funds is created and sustained. Our argument has never been that the university should pay us money that it cannot afford to pay. But we know that it's possible to negotiate an affordable pay for all in appreciation of our commonness, and that has brought us this far.
I received a suspension letter yesterday by electronic delivery from the PA of the Vice Chancellor, and asking me to take action, immediate action, as the letter required me to do. Of course, after receiving that, I was like any other normal person, wondering what to do next. I relaxed, and my team of lawyers and concerned citizens and friends analyzing the letter to give me advice on the way forward. And as the other legal partners tried to look into the matter and its detail, I urge the staff to remain calm. I'm still your chairman. I am still committed to things that we're working on, struggling on, to make our university a better place to serve.
I just want to say that we have agreed today that we begin a new chapter of mutual respect. Dr. Kamunyu for accepting to interact with the committee. I have encouraged him to be frank, like he is always frank, and tell the committee where things went wrong. And by the way, Dr. Kamunyu, my ego is too big to be massaged.
So at least now you have, a history of the happenings at Makerere University. And so in studios, we are joined by Dr. Prof Kamunyu, the chairman of MUASA, the Makerere University Academic Staff Association. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for hosting me.
You're welcome, the man at the center of this row. And also we are joined by Professor Venashes Bariamureba. Yes? Yes, the former Vice Chancellor of Makerere University. Thank you so much for making time.
It's nice being here again.
Thank you so much. David?
When I met the leaders from Makerere University, after all the stories that we have been hearing, the continuous stories, even today in the papers we have another story. And when you hear the Vice Chancellor himself saying that his ego is too big to be massaged, what is going on? Where is the... It looks like there's no chance of harmony between all the leaders in Makerere University. What is going on? What is going on? We want to find out from you. Is it a case of egos? Is it a case of... What is happening?
First of all, I thank you for hosting me and for posing such questions for clarity. I want to categorically say that on our side, there's no one with a big ego to massage. We are ready to negotiate issues of staff for their well-being, for better working conditions, and by the way, even extend to students, because the moment we have better working conditions on our side, the students will also benefit. Because I'm talking about a class which is swept, which is a 21st century classroom, fitted with all the gadgets, teaching aids, where students can have comfort to learn and create a positive attitude in their lives. So there's no this attitude of big egos. It does not arise, for me at least, I must say. So the Vice Chancellor's claim of a big ego, maybe that's where our problem is. That he proposes draconian laws against the national laws. Maybe that's where the problem is. But there is no problem on our side. We will always articulate issues that concern staff, and we will articulate them in a calm way and in an environment of honesty, and we call for that honesty and transparency, and that's it.
He's been smiling from the time he got here. He's as soon as he saw this headline here, Makerere VC proposes no pay for striking staff, he literally burst out into laughter.
What could be a reason?
You know what I mean? Actually, the Vice Chancellor does not propose laws. Actually, if there is to be even a policy, it is Council, not a Vice Chancellor. But let me first say this. You know, if you look at the constitutional law, I'm not a lawyer, but if you look at constitutional law, there is this principle we talk about called the principle of separation of powers. That principle ensures that you don't concentrate power or authority in one person or in one body. That's why in government you have the judiciary, headed by the Chief Justice, you have the legislature, headed by the Speaker, the executive, headed by the President. They work independently. As much as you have a President and the Chief Executive of the country cannot direct what the judiciary should do or what Parliament should do. And that separation of powers helps you to avoid having dictators. Now when it comes to a university setting is more or less follows the same principle. Where you have council, mainly directing on policy and also on other issues of the university, you have Senate, that is wholly responsible for academic matters, like it's the supreme organ in terms of academic matters, to ensure that a vice chancellor cannot easily award a degree to anybody. I heard of a scandal recently to do with Miss Africa.
Yes, I was about to go Miss Africa. No, it's Miss Uganda.
World Africa, whatever it is.
Yes.
You know, Senate has those powers to ensure that no degree of university just awarded anyhow. And if it's awarded wrongly, they have their powers to withdraw it. Then you have management. Once council has come up with decisions or directives, also looking at what is in the law, management implements in accordance with the law. Then, because, you know, in an institution, there is what we call academic freedom. Universities are not prisons. People must have that freedom to innovate, to research, and so on. So the law, even what we call the Universities and Other Resources Act, put in place associations for staff, for students. Now, these associations are not responsible to management. They're not responsible to council. They are also there to provide checks and balances. But if I'm a member of staff like Dr. Kamunyu here, and I don't do my work as a lecturer in my department, then there, the head of department has powers to do what he has to do, even to propose disciplinary action and so on. But if I'm doing my work as a chairperson of an association, you have to respect that. You know, you cannot, for example, gag students. When a student is acting on behalf of a student association, you have to ensure that what they are doing is either contradicting a law or some policies of the university that do not contravene the law, because you can come up with a policy that contravenes the law.
Right.
And in that case, none to that extent. So, going back to this story, you cannot, for example, deny staff the right to strike. It's a fundamental human right. And you cannot say that when you go on strike, I cannot pay you. You can't do that.
Right. You know, Mr. Kamunyu, your suspension was lifted, but the other two who you were actually suspended with still remain under suspension, and you're talking about Bennett Magara and also Mr. Joseph Kalema. What's the fate of the story moving forward?
Before this ruling, which I thought in courts of law, it was my own way of trying to help the university, which was in a had reached a deadlock to some extent, to allow another party to help us, because the courts have jurisdiction. I went to court, and my other colleagues remain in the system also, as I also submitted to the system. Remember, the Vice Chancellor had attempted to appoint a committee, and this is where I have a problem, because these are basics of administration, that you sack and then you appoint a committee, and that does not really resonate with the rules of natural justice, principles of natural justice. So when we accepted to interact with that committee, not to appear, but just to interact for the sake, the other colleagues accepted to remain in that system, and then later we pushed the matter to council, now before appointments board. So it so happens that my court line of action has yielded before appointments board. So it helps a bit, because it sets some precedent. It also shows that the university accepts that in the suspensions it committed some errors, and that those errors can guide the appointments board to quickly dispose this matter. But number two, you should know that in law, if my university was following laws, really for heaven's sake, these suspensions expired in law, and this is why I'm
because it's a public institution.
And I'm like, in my heart, what is happening to us? Because any administrator would know that if this is not really persecution, then it must be everything that should be done according to the law. So I interpret this to be persecution. We are being persecuted for doing our constitutionally provided for work.
You know, one would argue that, you know, with the ongoings of Professor, of course, Barnabas and what he's doing, you know, setting up a committee to probe you as well, and now we have, you know, your other two colleagues still, you know, on suspension and stuff like that. One would ask then, who is pretty much the overseer or the person who is controlling, you know, the push and pull between the professor and the three of you, pretty much, because you're the people who have now been brought to the limelight thanks to the boiling underneath. So who is the source of sanity pretty much at the middle of this?
You see, if you go back to industrial relations, and which to me is a problem, that's why to me leaders should go through these basics of, you know, administration. And with the principle of separation of powers, associations are provided for under the Unions Act. Whether we have an association under WASHIA, what we have a right to form an association under the Unions Act also, or to join a union, and we can act. But within the spirit of industrial relations, any administrator should know that matters concerning staff are also cardinal in the day-to-day running of the university or any organization. And so you must enter that arrangement of mutual respect and agreeing, continuous agreement with staff associations to cause an environment for them to work. But what we are seeing is an administration that has come to clamp or to crack down on staff associations instead, causing some kind of disharmony.
Do we have guidelines that pretty much stipulate the relationship that should be there between the administration and these associations pretty much? What guides that relationship?
I think in principle we should stick to our concerns. And then,
so as you stand, there's nothing that guides that relationship.
I mean, these associations are provided for in the universities and other tertiary institutions act. So to me, the issue is a matter of respecting the rule of law. I recently saw an opinion from the Makerere University Law School. You know, that's the best law school in the country, I would suppose. And most of the people in that law school are practicing, you know, advocates. So they came up and signed, I think there were about 20 of them, and it was so saddening to see the Vice Chancellor saying that their opinion is, this is wrong, this is false. You know, it's an opinion. You look at it, even if somebody has quoted a wrong section of the act, but the spirit of what they were communicating, really, it still meant a lot. So to me, I think we need to see how we can use the various organs we have in the institution. If it was Vice Chancellor and my colleagues in the law school come up and say, look, this is our advice. I would take it seriously, you know. So to me, what you see at Makerere is we need council to really come up with policies or statutes that are based on the law, that not contradict the law, that can guide the relationship between staff and management. Yeah.
Right.
Because
so
right now that statute is not there.
And that's why we're having this rouse pretty much.
Yes.
David?
Professor, I asked you earlier on, and I asked where the problem is. And with your quick definition or your first statements, it seems to suggest that you think that the professor here, the Vice Chancellor, is having all the powers and wants to...
You see, you put up a video there, and somebody told that my ego is what?
It's too big to be massaged.
To be massaged. You know, if you appear before, even if the students, you know, there is a way you can communicate the message, say I have power, but you don't have to communicate it that way. What I'm trying to say, I know Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, he's a nice person, but I think as if he is going to really govern, not govern, actually manage Makerere University as Vice Chancellor, and I know he's there as Vice Chancellor, he needs to be able to listen to whether it's students, whether it is staff, whether it is people within the management, and in some cases you have to build a consensus. But if in a university setting you say, if you don't do what I want or you don't follow my directive, either you are out or you'll be punished, things can never work like that.
But you say you know him, and you know he's a nice person, and you also highlight what you want him to do in case
yes,
there is to be harmony in this university. Do you see it happening with the person that you know? You know,
being nice is not good enough. That's why even in the government, he alluded to people taking some courses. For me, looking at how universities are being run, I would propose to the National Council for Education to come up with a sort of instrument that requires, when somebody is appointed head of department or a dean and you have never taken a certificate in administrative law, you should, because permanent secretaries do, and other senior government officers, because some of these things help you to have some basic knowledge. You know, that's why they teach financial literacy in some organizations and some people. So within universities, anybody can become a vice chancellor. You get me? A professor of law, a professor of public administration, a professor in architecture, a professor in engineering, computer science, math, anything. But at the end of the day, your skills in some of these areas are limited. You may be skilled in one area as a professor, but there are these other areas where you need some skills. So to me, I think that's why a vice chancellor has technical people below, like a legal directorate, human resource directorate, you have people in finance, you know, academic registrars unit, all those provide technical guidance, and you can only succeed if you respect that technical advice. Otherwise, everything can become a mess.
You know, Dr. Kamunyu, your suspension has been lifted, and we're getting feedback from social media, and many are saying that probably there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that the other two will also, you know, have the suspensions lifted. But what next? What then happens next? What are we likely to see in the coming days? You seemingly seem that you're still, you know, not comfortable with quite, you know, a number of things with regards to the administration and the bodies that, you know, pretty much stand for the staff. What should we be expecting in the coming days, or what will you do to make sure that this is streamlined pretty much?
Personally, I never start from a pessimistic point of view. I hope that this season has taught us to respect each other as leaders, because I'm the chairman of MWASA and he's the vice chancellor. I have never at any one point gone to the office of the vice chancellor for a personal discussion. It's always a staff concern, and he knows that. And so I'm looking forward for a better working relationship, in a way that we will sit again and talk about staff affairs where they arise, and there are issues that we have on the table, and this can be done, and we don't have to come to the media. Because what brought us to the media at some point was that we would go to his office and talk, and then all of a sudden something contrary to what we talked about comes out, and you, just like you see in the media here, VC does the but we talked otherwise. So it also forces me to go to the media, and we articulate these things. So to me, in the circumstances, I'm ready as a Chief of Staff Association,
to sit
and I'm
talk.
sure my other colleagues are ready to continue
continue talking as we have been doing, and we expect progress on our affairs. And so there's no, as a leader, really, I shouldn't take things personally.
But you see, the government of Uganda entrusts the university councils with the management of the institutions, overall oversight of the universities. So in this particular case, when you look at what's happening between management, headed by the Vice Chancellor, and staff, plus student associations, I think council needs to take a central role in mediation and also providing checks and balances. You don't want staff associations, student associations also to really have lots of powers and cripple the institution. Also don't want management to kind of become more or less like a dictatorial regime. So you want to make sure that council is able to moderate. And good enough, council has very many professionals. It has lawyers.
Right.
It has people who are good in administration, people experts in higher education. So the current council of Makerere University can actually ensure that Makerere University runs as a proper institution.
Do we then say that other universities have something to learn? Because pretty much we are seeing that the lack of some policies or guidelines pretty much is what has brought us to this stage. Do we say that then we have to have, you know, a blanket policy structure where other universities can also safeguard themselves with regards to the relationship between the administration and these other bodies?
That blanket we're talking about is actually the mandate of the National Council for Education.
Right.
It's supposed to look at what has been happening, what's happening in all these institutions, and come up with statutory instruments that guide all universities, including private universities, not only public. So that's what is needed. The National Council should always come in and look at some of these issues that keep cropping up. Even the one of staff and the council and the
in your
management.
view, what has taken so long? Why didn't they come up with it?
I mean, the council is there.
It's there, but
doing its work.
Right.
But I think there is to really, because if you look at the law, it empowers the National Council to fill in the gaps or to implement the Universities and Other Nationals Act. So it should really come up and propose some of these statutory instruments that can guide all universities in the country.
Doctor, when we were watching that video, the VC himself mentioned respect. As you were talking, you mentioned respect. So is there a chance that there is no respect between the two of you? Is it him that doesn't give you guys respect, or you don't respect him as the VC? Is there a tug of war or a surrounding respect? Now, we have looked at egos. You say you have no ego. He clearly told us his ego is too big to be massaged. Now, when it comes to respect, is that an issue as well?
Because if someone says they have a big ego to massage, it means then we can't sit and his idea should always win. And in the circumstances when we have these problems and you see a headline that the VC is proposing to pay you, not to pay you when you strike against the law, then that means there's a problem. But we think all these things can be a lesson to learn from. I assure you that as a chair of Makerere University Academic Staff Association, I am always willing and humbly to articulate issues that affect staff. And I will always articulate them with respect and with all kindness.
Don't you think you guys have been greedy? Because you two, the VC and once you keep pulling ropes, but the students are suffering. The lectures have been pushed.
But you know what?
And you've been greedy.
On this issue of respect, it is very, very important. You know, respect for authority is so critical in running an institution. Otherwise, things may not move. A head of department or a staff in a department like him must respect the head of department. Yes. Head of department must respect the dean. A dean has to respect high authority like vice chancellor and so on. But you know, when it comes to the issue of staff associations and their leadership, they are not under head of department or under vice chancellor. What is needed is the vice chancellor and management to respect that these associations are there. They are like parallel to management. They are not under management, and they are there to provide checks and balances. You know, they have a clear role to play.
Right.
The way you see in like the medical association, remember, they were on strike. They were fighting for the rights of medical doctors, and they had to respect them. They were not sacked. They were not threatened that your son is going to be cut and so on. You get what I'm saying? You go to America, you go to Kenya, you go to South Africa, everywhere across the world, these checks and balances are there. So it's for management to really appreciate that these people, whatever they do is complementary. And if they go outside the law, then they should be dealt with.
Right. And you know, we did ask a question on social media and we're getting feedback. Now, we did ask this question. What do you make of the ongoing row between Makerere University administration and the institution's academic staff? Now, the feedback we're getting is, and we have Mr. Derry saying that the staff has to get their salary increased. That's number one. Mr. Noble Israel is saying that the leadership of Makerere thinks only of themselves. We also have Mr. Godfrey saying that Professor Nawangwe is the key problem to the institution. He's working very hard for the downfall of the university. Especially the last remark, and I'll get to you. What's your view on that? Is this a judgment too soon?
No, let me tell you, when President Trump came into power, people thought America would collapse, but it has not, because they have systems, they have policies. I can assure you, if you have good laws, you have good policies, and the different arms, like Makerere now, are able to play their role, you can prevail over a vice chancellor to be in line and perform his duties. So, and the other thing that you have, like as a council, if you look at the law, it gives council powers that if you are convinced that a vice chancellor or deputy vice chancellor is like incompetent or can no longer execute his or her mandate, then you pass a vote of no confidence. You need 2/3 of members of council, and the person is removed from office. Now, but what happens in public institutions, that part of the law is never invoked, because there is this thing of collegiality. Let the person serve his term up to the very end.
Yes.
And when the term ends, that's why you see some people say, you can't come back for another time because I think you are not good enough. We should not always wait for that. If you counsel somebody, if you guide somebody as counsel, or government comes and tells you, I think you have to toe this line, and you don't, remove the person, the institution moves on.
I'm going to take you back to the case of greed, because it has been mentioned in one of the comments that we got there. You keep pulling ropes with the VC. Well, the people that should be looking up to you, the people who are looking at you and wondering what is going on, are suffering. Their lectures have been pushed. Yeah. And you guys being greedy and ignoring the reason why you are at the university.
It's regrettable that in the circumstances and in the state we are in, our students suffer. And this is why when one person asked me, don't you think someone has won? That's very unfortunate. 1 month of strike, losses, monetary losses, student losses, is regrettable. And we hope to learn from this. And so, for me, as a teacher, I would want to descend on my students and teach. As I talk, up to yesterday when the court ruling came, my students have not been taught. And the semester is about to end. I hope to descend on them on Monday and make sure they are on track. And I will do it, because I'm a committed teacher. But let me go back on greed. So I don't believe there's greed, but it's unfortunate that our conditions find us in such a situation where students have to lose. But let me go back to the issue of Professor Nawangwe proposing that he's not going to pay us. We are bringing, by the way, these questions to court. We are going to court over this question. We want to ask courts of law of Uganda, is it in order for the vice, because we lost salary in 2016, council, there are some council members, some politicians there who have been using this to frustrate our efforts. So we are going to bring these questions to court and have a determination which will guide the university. Is it in order for that when we are on a lawful strike for the institution not to pay our salaries? Is it in order? Because then it contradicts.
Right. But they should not have strikes every other day.
Yes.
You are spoiling the reputation of the institution.
Yes.
Some of us who are alumni of that institution, some of us who had our career there, you know, every time Makerere University is having issues, some of us are saying, can I ever say that I was a former vice chancellor? Because it loses the value, really. Yeah, you need to keep the institution up there. You need to have a mechanism of resolving all these issues to an extent possible. That maybe if you see a strike, it comes maybe after 5 years, but every semester.
Yeah, but this is what we are saying, and we don't go on strike because we intend to. Like for me, if for the last 1 year, maybe if there was to be a street, it would be every week because staff would be pushing. And I said, no, it can't be. We are positive. We don't want to be on strike. But when conditions push you to the wall, like in this case, Was it necessary for us to be stampeded out of the university?
Dr.
No.
Kamunyu,
There should have been negotiations, and the strike
Kamunyu,
would have been avoided.
Dr. Kamunyu, as we come to a close, looking on this other side, because like, Doctor has said that it's not good for the university to be seen to go on strike now and again. I mean, Makerere University is deemed as here, not just in the country, but in the the entire globally in the entire continent. So as a leader of MUWASA, what other options have you tried to look into just to solve the impasse between maybe the administration, or just to highlight your woes as for the staff pretty much, as opposed to just going on strike? Have you tried to look at the other options and pretty much try and test them?
Yes, active engagement. Like, for example, on our 29. But I also want you to look at the environment in which we operate. If you have a party which you are negotiating with and willing to take a step, what do? So it's a whole system of leadership which has troubles, that even conditions for negotiations are not there. Maybe the other people are not even willing to negotiate.
Are there other solutions for them? Because they're saying if the negotiation table is not, pretty much favorable, then they go for strike.
If you look at what is happening at Makerere, and maybe in some other institutions, some of the issues cannot be solved by just having a discussion. Some of them are governance issues where you have like members of council overstaying. So you need to have like a council charter, either at the university level or the National Council of Higher Education level, covering all university. A member of council, you come in once. If you serve your term and you are re-elected, you come in for one more term, but some people can stay there for 15 years. Right. And that kind of incumbency can bring problems. Then there are also issues within the law where like management, some members of don't know their roles. That there is the duplication of duties across various posts. And then you have a situation where somebody comes in as, let's say, a VC and has not gone through mentorship. In other universities like South Africa and other places in the world, they mentor you, don't just come in as a VC. There is this succession planning.
So what you're saying is that the many gaps that have to be fixed for us to find.
And then you cannot expect people to give you what they don't have.
Okay. All right.
Wow. And, yes. And then to me, under such circumstances, like Professor has prescribed, the possibility of engagements and yielding of these engagements is high. And then strikes would be, to me, I look at strike as challenges. Right. So you need, when a strike is going on, you just only need to resolve the strike. That's what we need to do.
Coffee break every Monday, MUWASA, another staff association, you have a coffee together and discuss.
What we need to do is to deal with underlying issues.
Okay.
Once you have underlying issues undermined constantly, the strikes will not be there. I'm very certain.
All right. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time, and we have to bring this to a close, David.
This discussion will never come to an end. It looks like we need a whole day, and hopefully the next time we can have the VC around so that we can sit him down and try to ask him how big his ego is and how much big hands we need so that we can massage it, and hopefully we can have some respect between the two institutions, because at the end of the day, this affects the university, it affects the products of the university, and the parents as well. Everyone is suffering, and I don't think that is what we wish for the university. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Badia, as many know you. No one cares about the first name. Professor Badia, former VC at Makerere University, and Doctor, your suspension has been lifted. So Monday, please get back to class and let's catch up.
I will.
We have missed a lot of time.
Sure, I will.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Right. And of course, talking Makerere, that is a topic that has been around for how many months now? 3?
A long time.
Yeah. And hopefully we got some answers this morning. If you feel we didn't get enough, please keep the conversation going on our social media platforms. All across, the hashtag is morning@NTV. Ask questions, share your opinions, and as we go on with the show, we will keep sharing them, and hopefully we can share some of them with the leaders at the university, and hopefully we can get some answers. Morning at NTV still continues. Good morning.